You think your family screwed up? Probably not as screwed up as these people. We're talking about the horror movie Hereditary next on the Bloody Breakdown. Let's get creepy. Okay, so the first half of this review is going to be spoiler free, with the second half delving into the spoilers of Hereditary, because I think you kind of have to talk about the spoilers to dive into what this actually was, this movie. Okay, so Hereditary is a movie that deals with a family that is royally screwed up. And basically, we come into the movie where the older matriarch of the family, the grandmother, has passed away. And the daughter, played by Toni Collette, is basically getting her family, which is her husband and her daughter, her young daughter, and her son, ready to go to the funeral. So basically the plot deals with the death of the grandmother and all the things that come from that, because clearly the grandmother was into some very dark supernatural stuff, and it's affecting pretty much the whole family. So it's not only does this family have really serious issues with everything else, on top of that, the other issues are supernatural. So what you watch in this film is the unfolding and the unraveling of this small family unit after the fallout of the grandmother's passing. And there seems to be some type of dark force that is trying to get at the family. And that's basically as much as you can say about it without giving a lot of it away. I have a lot of emotions when it comes to Hereditary, none of them uplifting. One of the main words I would use when thinking of this movie is two: defeatism and maybe despair and psychosis. So yeah, actually that was three words. I mean, having despair in a movie isn't like necessarily making it a bad movie, but those were the three words that I kind of associated with this. Yeah. So let's get into some of the pros and the cons, spoiler free, and then I'm going to talk about whether or not you should watch this film towards the end. But make sure to stick around for the spoilers, because I have to talk about the spoilers for this movie. So some pros of the movie. The acting. I mean, wow. This Toni Collette, Alex Wolff, who plays Peter, the son, are two of the main standout performances. They really just, knock it out of the park when it comes to the scenes that they have, and also the supporting actors, the famous actor who played the husband, and also the young girl who plays the daughter. It's a small cast, but the cast is very effective when it comes to each and every scene that happens in the movie, in terms of the emotions, in terms of dealing with grief, in terms of dealing with the aftermath, the estrangement between the family members. Like, it was perfect casting, and I feel like if this movie had any other actors, I probably would be even more baffled by it than I already am. So the atmosphere, I mean, it very much establishes that something's kind of off. The style of it was really, really great, and I think that's contributed to first-time director Aster, who basically wrote and directed this film. That each scene is, I mean, you can almost call it like art house horror, because the way the scenes are set up, it's so, a lot of the scenes are very beautiful, they're very eerie. There's a play on the miniature figurines and things like that Toni Collette's character builds, which is basically, she uses as replicas of her life and scenes of her life. It's a very pretty film. It's a very beautiful film in the sense of the way everything's set up. And what's so cool about that with this particular film is like when there's moments where there's something in the darkness and you can't quite see it. It's not like straight out overt. It's very subtle, and there's times when it's like, okay, what is that? There's something totally right there, but it doesn't jump out at you. So what happens, especially if you're watching it in big groups, I think, which was very cool, is that it would take, you know, like a wave in terms of who would recognize, okay, there's something happening that's not cool in this scene. Because if you just look at it on the surface, it's like, oh yeah, this is fine, but it's like, no, there's something deeper going on here in terms of like the visual. But this film very much played on what could be in the darkness. You can kind of see it, but you can't totally see it. You kind of get a glimpse, but it's not totally there. And it kind of plays on your mind, which was a theme in this film, because Toni Collette's character is going through a lot of stuff. So, I mean, those are the main two pros of this film, because in a way that's kind of what carries the film, if you ask me, when it comes to Hereditary. And I know that seems weird, because it's like, that's a very short pro list, but that's not necessarily like, oh, that's a very short pro list, which means this film was complete crap. Not necessarily, because those two pros are very major. I mean, the acting and the atmosphere, like, you totally need that. But I'll admit, a lot of issues with the film, and what it was, some things that just didn't land as well to me to make this such what everyone kept calling it as, like, one of the best horror films of the year and a true new classic. I just honestly did not get that vibe from this film. For a number of reasons. So we'll go into the non-spoilery cons right now. Okay, so the plot line. Like I mentioned earlier, this should have been a very simple plot, and it seemed simple enough. Like, clearly the grandmother was into some weird stuff, and now the family is being haunted by whatever weird stuff she was in, and the family's in danger. What's gonna happen with the family? And for the most part, that's what the film was. Until it wasn't. Like, somewhere in the last, like, maybe 10 minutes, like, everything, I don't know. I'm trying to say it without getting totally spoilery, but you ever, you know, sit in a film and it's like, this is great until the third act? Yeah, no. Everything just went left, and not in the good horror movie left, but in like, whoa, like, why'd you do that? Like, you had the KISS method going of keep it simple, silly, and which is the KISS method, and it turned into something that felt kind of convoluted, felt kind of crammed in, felt not necessarily totally earned. I felt like that really was a hindrance to the plot. And if you're someone who's really into horror plots, or just plots when it comes to storylines in general, that may be a turnoff for you, because it was a turnoff for me, for sure. Structure. That was another con to me. And when I say structure, I mean, and this is maybe me sounding kind of, you know, snobby, as someone who writes. I do write, guys. As someone who writes fiction and nonfiction, I think the heart to every story is conflict. You know, that's where the story is. That's where the heart of the story is. And that conflict, the resolution is what, you know, is what the payoff is of a story, right? It's kind of like, you know, person A needs this, but person B stands in their way. That's the conflict. Who will win out of these people? And sometimes it's not two people. Sometimes it's a force. Something super simple, like person A wants to walk down the street and get across the street, but there's a truck in the way. That's a story. You know, the story isn't necessarily person A is walking down the street and let's watch person A walk down the street. And I'm going to make that make sense. Follow me on this. I felt like this plot, this structure had it so you're just kind of watching this family go through stuff. Like, there's nothing, even with the protagonist, like, none of them seem to really take agency throughout. To really try to solve some type of problem or conflict, like outwardly. It's more like things are happening. This is crappy. Oh my gosh, what is going on? And that's what I mean when I say one of the words that came to my mind was defeatism, because I just felt like that was all throughout this film. It was kind of like maybe they're just, you know, I was trying to justify it, like maybe they're just so broken that even when all this stuff happening, they just don't have the will to really be proactive in, you know, dealing with this. And No, I don't think that was necessarily. I think honestly it was the structure that fell flat, because you're honestly just watching this happen to this family, and there's really no there's a conflict in the sense that, I mean, of course the family doesn't want to be haunted and things like that, but it's not an active conflict, if that makes sense. It's kind of like you're just watching this unfold and no one's like really seems to be fighting against these things. An actual thing to root for, a side to kind of want to win. This movie didn't really drive that home, I felt like, when it came to the structure. So it's kind of like, what's the point of, like, you know, you have all these great scenes of like characters going at it and things like that. You got this great atmosphere, but then you kind of lack a real agency of the characters and the conflict. So you don't know if there's anyone to root for, because maybe no one's doing anything to root for, if that makes sense, without me completely spoiling things, I guess. The other con was that I felt like there were times when this movie dragged. It was a little over 2 hours long, and it felt like it. I think what a really good movie is that you get so lost in it that you're like, when it ends, you're like, whoa, already? And I've had that experience even with like 2.5 hour movies. But with this movie, they had some really good key moments throughout, like I was saying, but then there would just be moments where it was like, you'd kind of notice you've been sitting there in the theater for a bit. You'd notice it. I mean, not to talk too much about the people around me, but people would start stirring a little bit, like, yeah, you know how that vibe is when people start kind of shifting, because, you know, it was like stretches of time throughout the film where it was like, okay, what's happening now? I mean, there were some real key moments that were like, whoa, now we're getting somewhere, but I felt like at times it took too long to get there, and there were just these moments within this 2 hour movie that was just like, whoa. The other con was the depth. Okay, so I think, and maybe I'm going to sound weird if I say this, weirder than I am, horror is very good at doing, right? Horror from, you know, the first Night of the Living Dead and others a lot of them have always dug a little deeper to either socio-political themes or themes that deal with human nature or things of that nature in general. And I think Hereditary tried to do that. And I think on the surface, you could think this movie was deep in the sense of dealing with broken families and maybe a daughter who never felt like she lived up to her mother's expectations, or, you know, things of that nature. I think on the surface, it was deep, if that makes sense, right? On the surface, it was deep, because, I mean, that's a different kind of theme to deal with sometimes in a horror movie. You don't see that every day. Now, in my opinion, that's as deep as it gets, though, because from there on, it's just, you know, it's kind of a story about people getting haunted. And I don't know, I mean, not that I was looking for this movie to be deep, but I guess this is one of those times where maybe I listened to the hype a little too much, because, you know, people were saying that it was gonna like shake you to your core and your soul and you need like therapy afterwards. And yeah, I mean, it was disturbing, but a lot of stuff is. It just wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is like no, I didn't feel that. Is this movie Stab approved? Now, this is going to be the first time where I'm going to, I'm still semi on the fence, because I'm still processing, because there were so many cool moments in this movie, but I don't think cool moments necessarily culminate to make a really great movie, if that makes sense. So this is what I'm going to do. I think this movie is Stab approved for people who want to look at really cool directing scenes and really great acting in certain parts. That's where it's Stab approved at. In terms of a general audience, I don't necessarily think it's Stab approved. I think maybe it's like the 5th you could Stab. Like if there's 4 other movies you want to see, maybe watch those first. I don't think you need to run to the theater to see this. Don't stab this in general. Be specific with your stabbing. Yes. Make sure to comment down below and let me know your thoughts, and also be sure to subscribe so you are the first to know when I post my new review of horror movies. And be sure to stick around for the spoiler segment of this video coming up right after. Okay, I'm not gonna dwell too much on the spoilers of this. There were just some things I needed to say when it came to this film. Toni Collette's character, somewhere in the midst of like maybe close to the third act, kind of decides, wow, there's something trying to kill my son. I should fight that. And that fighting lasts all of like maybe 5 minutes. And then she's possessed. And then it's over for her. And it's like, where's the conflict here? Yes, you could think on the surface the conflict is a family is being haunted. That's not the conflict. The conflict is, or what could have been the conflict is, the family is haunted. Toni Collette's character is trying to fight against it. And what could have been the case was like maybe half of the second half of the film, she's fighting it, and you don't get that at all. All you end up watching is bad thing after bad thing happen to this broken family. You're just watching this family descend into further darkness. But I mean, in the end, it was kind of like you just watched this happen. You kind of watched the train wreck, you know? And I don't know if that makes for good storytelling, because, you know, there should be a conflict there. There should be a forces going at each other like that, each one have a fighting chance, and I just felt like the family had no fighting chance. That's what I meant when I said defeatism, because I was just like, this is a hopeless situation. And within the 2 hours, I was waiting for someone to take agency. Like when Toni Collette's character, you know, eventually just beheads herself, I thought, okay, so the son is going to, this long-suffering son is going to, played wonderfully by Alex Wolff, is going to come up and somehow persevere. Maybe he'll get the girl that he's been talking to for a bit, maybe he'll call her and she'll help him out somehow. None of that happened. Like, he lasted maybe another 3 minutes after the mom died. And that was that. And then he was possessed. And then it was done. And I was just like, where's the fight in this? I think you should have some chance of winning in a horror picture, some of the protagonists anyway. And if that's not the case, you're kind of just watching bad stuff happen to people. That's not a plot line to me. And that was like my big point of contention with this film. The most intense moment was when the little girl died. That was probably the most intense moment in how that happened. And the aftermath of that for the next couple of scenes was amazing. And if I could like cut that into like a short film, I would, and I'd say stab approved for everybody. Everyone should watch that part. But then there's all the other parts of this movie. Everything went to hell. Literally. Ba-dum-bum. I'll be here all night, guys. I don't know if I liked it. I don't think I did. I don't think I liked this movie. I love the acting. I loved some of the scenes, but I don't think I like this movie as a whole. Did you watch Hereditary? And did you think some of the thoughts I have, do you think I overlooked something? Would you like to talk about maybe this movie was as deep as I'm not thinking it was? Make sure to comment down below and let me know your thoughts. And also be sure to subscribe so that you are the first to know when I post my new videos. Thanks for watching. Let's get creepy together.